Welcome to Propeller Breeze, the show for student pilots, sim fans, and everyone chasing that first solo and beyond. All information in this podcast is for entertainment and general knowledge only. Always verify with certified flight instructors or regulatory authorities before attempting anything mentioned here.
Imagine departing from an airport almost 8,000 feet up in the Rocky Mountains, right? You're surrounded by these massive rising granite peaks. You push the throttle forward for takeoff, expecting that familiar surge of acceleration, but the airplane just feels sluggish.
Right, it's just not responding.
Yeah, exactly. It simply refuses to climb the way you're used to.
Right.
Or imagine another scenario. You're on short, final approach to your home runway. The pavement is just rushing up to meet you, and you suddenly realize you are sinking fast.
Oh, that is a terrifying feeling.
It really is. You're dropping dangerously below your safe glide path. So today we are doing a deep dive into the invisible physics that dictate whether you clear those mountains, recover that approach, or, well, become a tragic statistic.
And these are the exact high-stakes scenarios laid out in the excerpts we're analyzing today from Principles of Aviation Energy Risk Management. It's a text that really forces a complete reckoning with how we understand flight.
It really does.
It moves us away from this illusion that an airplane is just a car that moves in 3 dimensions. And it pushes us toward the reality that an airplane is essentially an energy management system interacting with a very unforgiving environment.
And if you're listening to this and you are a student pilot, maybe you are working toward your private pilot license right now, spending your weekends practicing steep turns and stalls, this deep dive is custom built for you.
Absolutely.
Because our mission today is to initiate a total paradigm shift. We want to take your mind off simply, pushing and pulling the yoke and rewire how you actually visualize the forces keeping you in the air.
Yeah, and the source material lays down a very specific premise right out of the gate to trigger this shift. It states, and I'm quoting here, "Besides learning the proper use of the controls for normal energy management tasks, pilots should be equipped with the ability to identify, assess, and mitigate 2 major risks associated with mismanagement of energy."
Okay, so let's really pull that first half apart. Besides learning the proper use of the controls. That phrasing is so interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why is that?
Well, it implies that knowing how to physically manipulate the yoke, the rudder pedals, and the throttle is it's merely the baseline. It's just the bare minimum.
Oh, for sure.
You can memorize that pulling the yoke back makes the nose go up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't understand the underlying cost of that action, you're essentially operating blindly. The text is demanding a much deeper level of situational awareness.
You're right.
It's pushing us to understand the airplane's total energy state.
Yes, and that phrase, total energy state, or mechanical energy, as the text also calls it, that is the crux of this entire philosophy. Rote memorization of control inputs will honestly only get you so far.
Right.
True airmanship requires you to constantly read the invisible forces acting on the airframe.
So I was wrestling with this concept of mechanical energy while I was reading the excerpts, right? I was trying to find a way to visualize it without getting bogged down in complex math.
Which is easy to do with this stuff.
Exactly. So I started thinking about the airplane's energy like a personal financial ledger. Let's see if this mental model actually holds up for you.
Okay, I'm listening. Let's hear it.
So your altitude, how high you are in the sky, that is your savings account. It took hard work and time to build it up, right?
Yeah.
And it provides a massive safety cushion.
I like that.
Then your airspeed, how fast you are moving forward, that's your checking account. It's highly liquid. It's what you are actively spending moment to moment just to generate lift over the wings.
Right, because you need speed to stay flying.
Exactly. And then your engine power, the throttle, is your income. It's bringing new energy into the system.
That's actually a really solid analogy, but we can take that even further.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, because to make the financial ledger complete, we have to account for expenses, right?
Yeah.
Aerodynamic drag, the physical resistance of the air against the airplane that acts as a constant, unrelenting tax on your account.
Oh, a tax. I hate taxes, but that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, every single second you are in the air, you are paying that drag tax. So in an airplane, you're constantly making financial transactions to balance these accounts against that tax.
Okay, let me walk through a basic transaction then to see if I've got this. If I push the nose down to initiate a dive, I am basically taking a withdrawal from my altitude savings account, and I'm depositing it directly into my airspeed checking account.
Exactly. You lose height, but you gain speed. It's a direct transfer.
And if you pull the yoke back to climb, you do the reverse.
Spot on. You are actively draining your airspeed checking account to build up your altitude savings. You are buying height with speed.
Wow. Okay.
But here is the critical takeaway from the text. You cannot increase the total combined balance of both accounts just by moving the yoke. The yoke just transfers funds back and forth.
But because there's no new money coming in.
Exactly. The only way to increase the total balance is to increase your income. You have to add engine power.
Which means if a student pilot only learns how to steer, like if they treat the yoke as just a 3D steering wheel to point the nose left, right, up, or down, they're completely ignoring their bank balance.
They're just shuffling money around without looking at the bottom line.
Right. They're just making random transfers without realizing they might be going completely bankrupt.
Which is so dangerous. And the ultimate goal, as the text states, is to identify, assess, and mitigate energy mismanagement before it becomes an emergency. You need to read the financial ledger of your flight, anticipate those drag expenses, and know exactly what your income limits are.
Man, that really reframes things. And this brings us to the first major risk the text identifies. What happens when an unexpected expense pops up and you accidentally dip into those funds?
Right. The text defines this as risk 1, unwanted deviations from the desired energy state.
And it clarifies that this specifically means unintended altitude airspeed deviations.
Yeah, translating that back into our ledger analogy, an unwanted deviation is it's like checking your bank balance and realizing you've somehow overdrafted.
The worst feeling.
Truly. You intended to hold a specific altitude and a specific airspeed, but maybe due to a wind shear, or a lapse in your attention, or perhaps an uncoordinated maneuver, you've deviated. Your energy state has deteriorated from what you desire it to be.
And the text illustrates this with a scenario that, honestly, every pilot will inevitably face.
Yeah.
Final approach.
Oh yeah, it happens to everyone.
It describes unintentionally descending below the desired glide slope on final approach to landing and failing to make the proper correction.
Yeah.
Like, you have this mental picture of the ideal pass onto the runway, and suddenly you realize you're sinking.
The sight picture just looks wrong.
Yeah, the trees are getting larger, the runway perspective is flattening out, you're just getting too low, too soon.
And the source material poses a direct, seemingly simple question here. It asks, to bring the airplane back to the desired glide slope, should the pilot pitch up, throttle up, or both?
And this is where the conflict between human instinct and aerodynamic reality becomes incredibly dangerous.
It really is a trap.
Let's reason this out. If I'm falling toward the ground, my primate brain is screaming at me to pull away from the danger. My instinct is to grab the yoke and pull back. I want to pitch up.
Right, get away from the ground.
Exactly. But if I only do that, I'm just making a transfer. I'm trying to buy back my altitude savings, but I haven't changed my throttle income at all.
Let's look at the physical mechanism of why that specific transfer is so costly. When you pull back on the yoke to pitch up, you aren't just pointing the airplane's nose higher. You are fundamentally changing the angle at which the wing meets the oncoming air.
The angle of attack, right?
Exactly. You're exposing more of the underbelly of the wings to the wind, and doing that creates massive induced drag. It is literally as if you've suddenly deployed an invisible parachute beneath the airplane.
So the tax bill skyrockets.
Immensely. You pitch up, and for a brief second, you might actually arrest your descent.
Which tricks you.
Yes, it tricks your human instinct into thinking, oh, I solved the problem, I'm going up. But that invisible parachute is draining your airspeed checking account at an alarming rate.
And on final approach, your checking account is already dangerously low, right? Because you're flying slowly to prepare for landing.
Exactly. You don't have the funds to cover it. If you drain it any further, the wings can no longer generate enough lift to combat gravity. You enter an aerodynamic stall, and the airplane just falls out of the sky.
Wow. So relying on the yoke alone to fix a low glide slope solves the altitude problem for roughly, 2 seconds, only to create a completely lethal airspeed problem right after.
Precisely. It's a false economy.
Okay, what if we try the second option? What if I just throttle up? I recognize I'm low, so I just shove the throttle forward to increase my income.
Well, think about the geometry of the situation. If you increase your income, but you do not change the attitude of the airplane.
Like if my nose is still pointed down.
Right. If you're still pointing along that degraded lower trajectory, what happens to all that extra energy you just added?
Oh, I see. It just translates into forward speed. My checking account fills up rapidly, but because I haven't adjusted my pitch to invest that energy into a climb, I'm still flying along the exact same path toward the ground, just short of the runway.
You're just going to arrive at the scene of the crash a few seconds earlier.
Yeah, I've missed the glide slope entirely. That's wow.
This scenario completely proves that treating the yoke as the up and down control and the throttle as the fast and slow control is a fundamental misunderstanding of flight dynamics. To recover the glide slope, you must do both.
You have to add the income with the throttle, giving the airplane raw energy, and then simultaneously you pitch up to direct that new energy into buying back your altitude savings, all while monitoring your airspeed to ensure you don't stall.
Right. It's a coordinated investment. It forces you to manage the total energy state. Treating pitch and power as inextricably linked tools, you can't separate them.
Now, as intense as that is, risk one is usually an error you can buy your way out of, right? If you recognize the deviation early enough, add the income, adjust the pitch, you fix the ledger.
Usually, yes, assuming you have the altitude to recover.
But the text warns of a second risk that completely changes the stakes. It uses a single word that makes this infinitely more terrifying, and that word is irreversible.
Yeah, that word carries a lot of weight. WSIC 2 is defined in the text as unintentional, irreversible deceleration and/or sink rate causing depletion of mechanical energy.
And it expands on that definition, describing unforeseen, continuous airspeed and/or altitude loss, coupled with little or no available excess power in a given flight condition.
It's that phrase, little or no available excess power, that is just so chilling.
In our financial model, this is the definition of absolute bankruptcy.
Exactly. Your savings are draining, your checking account is plummeting, the drag tax is incredibly high, and your income is entirely capped. You've pushed the throttle all the way to the firewall, the engine is giving you every single ounce of horsepower it's capable of producing, and it is still mathematically insufficient to cover your expenses.
You're losing energy, and the laws of physics dictate that you simply cannot generate enough income to get it back. The deceleration and the sinking are literally irreversible.
And the text gives us scenario 2 to ground this concept in reality. It says, flying toward rising terrain and not being able to fly up and over it before impacting terrain.
And it points us to a very specific environment where this risk is exceptionally high, departing from runway 33 at Aspen-Pitkin County Airport, KIC.
Right. The text specifically notes the elevation of Aspen. It's 7,820 feet. It tells us to note the rising terrain all along the departure corridor.
It paints a very bleak picture. And then it asks the ultimate question. What can the pilot do to prevent an impending crash?
Well, to answer that, we really have to look at what taking off at nearly 8,000 feet actually does to the physics of the airplane.
Because it changes everything, right?
It fundamentally alters both your income and your expenses. At 8,000 feet above sea level, the air is thin. The density of the air molecules is significantly lower than it is down at sea level.
Okay, so how does that affect the engine?
For a standard, normally aspirated engine, meaning an engine that just breathes the ambient air without a turbocharger forcing extra oxygen into it, this is a severe handicap.
Because combustion requires oxygen. If the engine is gulping thin air, there's less oxygen available, which means it has to burn less fuel.
Exactly, meaning it produces a fraction of its rated horsepower. At a sea-level airport, pushing the throttle full forward gives you a massive income stream. You have an abundance of excess power to climb steeply or accelerate rapidly.
But taking off from Aspen.
Your engine is essentially asthmatic. Your maximum possible income is slashed before your wheels even leave the pavement.
Okay, so your income is severely limited. But what about the expenses? The thin air affects the wings too, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The wings need dense air molecules flowing over them to generate lift. In thin air, the airplane must fly at a faster true airspeed or at a higher angle of attack just to maintain the exact same amount of lift it would have at sea level.
And as we established earlier, a higher angle of attack exposing more of the wing's underbelly generates massive induced drag.
Right. The invisible parachute gets bigger.
So your drag tax goes through the roof.
Exactly. You have a situation where your maximum income is slashed and your daily operating expenses are astronomical.
Let's put ourselves in that cockpit at Aspen. You take off, you're flying toward the rising terrain, and you realize the mountains are filling the windshield.
A nightmare scenario.
You aren't climbing fast enough. My first instinct, again, is to pull back on the yoke to climb. But we know what happens. That increases the drag tax. My airspeed checking account drains. And because my engine is asthmatic and already maxed out, I have no income to replenish it.
Right, you'll stall and fall.
Okay, so if I can't pitch up and I can't add power, my brain is screaming at me to just crank the yoke, bank the airplane hard, and turn around. Get out of there. Why wouldn't that work?
Because banking an airplane into a steep turn drastically increases the load factor on the wings.
Wait, really? Just turning increases the load?
Yes. To maintain altitude in a steep turn, the wings have to generate significantly more lift than they do in level flight, which means you have to pitch up even more, which creates an exponential increase in drag. A steep turn is one of the most expensive aerodynamic maneuvers you can perform.
So it's an astronomical tax bill that comes due immediately.
And you simply do not have the funds to pay it. If you try to turn around in that depleted energy state, the drag will instantly bleed off whatever airspeed you have left, resulting in a stall and a spin directly into the terrain.
Oh, wow. So the text asks, what can the pilot do to prevent an impending crash? If you're already in the air, flying toward the granite, maxed out on power, unable to climb, and unable to turn.
The terrifying truth is that you can do absolutely nothing. The deceleration is irreversible. The crash is already happening. You are essentially just a passenger managing the final coordinates of the impact.
That's incredibly sobering.
Which is why the only correct answer to the text's question is anticipation. You prevent the crash by never allowing the airplane to enter a state where irreversible depletion is even mathematically possible.
So proper energy management is done on the ground long before you even turn the key.
Exactly. It means sitting in the flight planning room and doing the accounting. Calculating your weight, calculating the density of the air, and calculating your engine's actual power output for that specific elevation.
It requires looking at the departure corridor and recognizing that your required climb gradient is an expense you just cannot afford with the income you'll have.
Right. You mitigate the risk by carrying less fuel, or leaving a passenger behind to reduce weight, or simply waiting until early morning when the air is colder and denser.
Because colder air improves both engine income and wing performance.
Exactly.
This really transforms energy management from just a physical skill into an ongoing philosophy. It's the ability to see the invisible ledger and respect its absolute limits.
And it proves that mastering this concept provides you with the critical capability to anticipate and avoid those tragic results.
So we've dissected the glide slope trap and the necessity of coordinated inputs. We've unpacked the terrifying mathematics of irreversible energy depletion in the mountains, and we've translated the invisible forces of altitude, airspeed, and drag into savings, checking, and expenses.
The goal here is that you now view the controls not as a steering wheel and a gas pedal, but as tools to actively manage a continuous flow of energy.
I love that. And I want to leave you with a final thought to take with you. We've talked so much about engine power being your income, but consider the glider pilot.
Oh, that's a great point.
Gliders don't have engines at all. Their income is permanently zero. Yet they can fly for hundreds of miles, entirely by reading the atmosphere, finding rising currents of air, and meticulously managing their altitude and airspeed ledgers without wasting a single drop of energy to unnecessary drag.
They are the ultimate energy managers.
Exactly. So the next time you're up there, ask yourself, are you relying on your engine to cover up sloppy, expensive flying? Or are you consciously balancing the invisible ledger of airspeed, altitude, and drag in your mind? Because mastering that ledger is the fundamental difference between hoping you clear the terrain and mathematically knowing you have the energy to make it safely back to the ground.
That's it for this episode. Keep your wings level, your brain sharp, and catch you next time in the pattern. Thanks for riding with Propeller Breeze.